Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Excelcast. I'm your host, Joe Parker, and today I have a childhood friend on again, Phil Petrina. Phil, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Joe, thanks for having me. Really appreciative of the opportunity and come on to your podcast and share some words. I really appreciate that you called and thought of me. So, yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You've always been a great example of striving to achieve your goals and achieving your dreams. And specifically, tell us what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, so it I guess kind of goes back like probably about 6 years. I started when I started my journey to go to law school and to become an attorney, where I am today. So I'm a full time practicing attorney at a big law firm based in Harrisburg. We have offices all over the state in Ohio, Maryland, and DC. It's McNeese, Wallace, and Nuremberg. So that's where I'm working at right now. Um, to get there was an incredible journey and a lot of hours spent um, in the classroom and studying um, and working hard during my undergrad to finish things. So I went to Dickinson College for my undergrad, and I ended up choosing Dickinson because I got recruited there to play football, and I never really thought that I wanted to go to Dickinson because it was so close to home, being in Carlisle, and we're both from Harrisburg, so it's about 30 minutes away. Um, but it's a great school, and I'd always known that, but I just didn't know if I wanted to go there because it was so close to home,
Yeah,
and
you kind of wanted to have that independence a little bit, but
yeah,
it
so
didn't really allow
my
for that.
mom, right, right. My mom asked me if I wanted to apply to Dickinson initially, and I was like, no, like it's too close. I know it's a good school, but I don't really want to go to school that close to home. Um, and then their football program started chatting with me. They came and visited me at school, and so I went on the visit with a very open mind. And what I learned was that there are a lot of opportunities there that I just couldn't pass up on. And one of the main selling points for me was, excuse me, somebody that was interested in, at that point in time, I was 18 years old. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do for a career, but I thought that maybe I'd want to go to law school. Um, and so I wanted to do like a business type undergrad, and then maybe go to law school and leverage that law degree um, from a business perspective, and either go into business or practice law. And so I ended up doing just that. But I went to Dickens. I went to that visit with the football program. They told me about this 3-and-3 program that they have. If you finish your undergraduate requirements in 3 years, you can apply and try to get into Penn State Dickinson Law a year early, and save. So you save so much money by doing that a year ahead of time. And so, I thought that maybe I wanted to have that opportunity to do that. And so I chose Dickinson. I got a lot of money to go there, academic scholarship money to go there. So there's the whole package was just too much to pass on. And
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to play football there um, for 4 years. And so I went and I declared my undergrad early and as an econ major, and I just started chipping away at it. Um, Building towards that 3-and-3 goal. And then, towards the end of my sophomore year, I had to take the LSAT. I started working towards trying to get into the law school because, of course, like you can do all of that, but if you can't get in, then you can't do it. So you
Yeah.
have to apply separately. You have to get in. So I started that my sophomore year. At the end of my junior year, I applied. Eventually, was able to successfully gain admission a year ahead of time into Penn State Dickinson Law. And so then there was another real big debate and another hurdle that I had to overcome. And that was, I was a 2-year, at that point in time, I was a 2-year defensive starter, 3-year special teams and defensive starter at Dickinson. The program was really starting to build, and I had invested, a lot of time and effort into the program, and my coaches wanted me to come back, and so then I had a decision to make whether I was gonna, in my what should have been my senior year of college, which turned into my first year of law school, whether or not I was going to continue playing football while I was in law school in my first year,
Mm.
or if I was going to hang it up and just focus full time on law school, which is like a full time job. So that was a little bit of a debate, and a lot of the advisors at the college and at the law school, attorneys that are family friends of ours, just people that we know, in talking to them during that time period um, of what my decision was going to be there, and the consensus advice was that you should quit playing football and focus full time on law school,
Yeah.
because that it's a full time job and you have to be fully committed to law school to excel at it and to do well. And at that time in Dickens College, nobody had done that program that was a student athlete. So at least in the school's modern history, they couldn't tell me a time, anybody at the college, when the last time it was that somebody had done that and started
Wow.
in an NCAA sport while attending the first year of law school. And so the last time that somebody even did the program was 2009, and that individual was not an athlete. So everybody was advising me against doing that, but I kind of knew you have to trust and believe in what you can accomplish and what you've been building towards. And so I went for it, and I went back for my last year of eligibility. I started all 11 games for us at corner, and went to law school. So it was a wild time that first year,
I bet.
and I still finished, ranked in, I was still finishing in the top quarter of the class that semester. So, all of the conventional wisdom and you shouldn't do this or you should do that. Um, if you have a goal in mind and you trust and believe in the process that it takes to get there, and um, yourself and your person, and you truly can commit and be disciplined towards achieving those goals, man, like you can. I'm a big believer in this. You can do almost anything that you set your mind to. So that's just what it was. So committed to it, and um, I did that and finished strong. And then I continued on through law school the next 2 years. I went on in my third year to become the Student Bar Association president at Penn State Dickinson Law. So that was another crazy experience, which was, it was a really fun time for me. And I still give back to the law school because they really crafted me into where I am today. And so I can't credit them enough with the direction that my early career is taken at Penn State Dickinson Law, because they really set me up for success. And so I give back through um, the Dickinson Law Leadership Advisory Committee. And so it's an advisory committee of alums that they invite back to campus 3 times a year to give back and share advice on the direction of the law school. And so I'm happy to do that. And that's one of the other things I've been doing on top of practicing full time. So that kind of catches up to speed. I've been
Yeah.
practicing, now at McNeese Wallace and Nurick, as an intellectual property, commercial contracts, and business attorney there, and that's been a heck of a learning experience for me. And I'm still growing and learning every day, but it's, once again, you're just back to that stage of building again, and setting measurable goals that you can chip away at each and every day until you ultimately build and craft what it is that you're looking to do. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That is a wild ride. Just being, being able to achieve the things that you achieved. One question that I had though is you
Mhm.
said that you were an econ undergrad. So
Yeah,
I always assumed that, to get a law degree, you had to go in with like studying law, like as a freshman.
yeah,
So
right.
did you have to, was that like a specialty that you picked? Like you were like, I know I want to be a lawyer, but I want to do business. So I'm going to do econ and then go into being a lawyer. Like, how was your thought process with that?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know this actually, but there are no undergrad requirements for you to get into law school.
Hmm.
Um, you can you can be a biology major and decide you're going to go to law school. You just have to have an undergraduate degree to get into a law school. So you can major in anything, get an undergraduate degree in it, and go to law school. And what a lot of people do, that, for example, like if you're passionate, I gave the example of biology. Um, if you're passionate about those issues or that area, you can use that then to leverage your legal career into something, say, in the medical field. Um, when I was a first year law student, there was one. There was he was a second. I think he was a second year law student. He was 1 year ahead of me, and the guy was literally a pharmacist before he went to law school.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and now he's a full-time attorney, and he went to law school, and he leveraged his pharmacy degree into working at a big law firm in DC, and he works in that space now as an attorney. So in the medical field, in the pharmaceutical industry as a lawyer. So
Hmm.
that's there's so many things that you can do with a law degree, and so a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. But
Yeah.
so I did economics, but I've always been a more business minded person, and so I thought that maybe I would just get an economics degree and do something business related with it. And now, of course, I have the law degree, and I'm practicing business law with a specialty in intellectual property, and branding and advertising law. So um, all related things, but that was
Yeah.
the path that I took. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting because whenever I thought of a lawyer, right, I thought that they focus on law, and I never really understood the background as to how they picked their niche,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like that's really interesting that that's how it's approached. I also didn't know that you needed any sort of undergrad degree to get into law school, so that was really cool. Thanks for sharing that because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people like, say you're in your second or third year and you want to be a lawyer and you don't know that piece of information, you could be like, "Oh, well, I can't be I'm already 3 years into school. I can't be a lawyer." When in fact, you can take your LSATs and get into law school with that degree that you just got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's yeah, and you can do it, and people go back to law school a little bit later in life too. Not everyone would want to do that just based on like life circumstances and debt and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
but the chair of our practice group that I work for at McNeese, in the intellectual property group, he was an engineer before going to
Really?
law school. And so he went to Penn State. He got an engineering degree, worked in an engineering firm for a little while, decided that he didn't love working at an engineering firm and started going to law school in the evenings. And then he got a law degree, passed bar exam, and he's been practicing law now ever since at McNeese. He's the chair of the Intellectual Property Group, and so his experience as an engineer has made him a very valuable IP attorney because of that background that he has. So there are all kinds of different paths that people take in leveraging themselves into different careers and in the legal field and in others too. Like I think a lot of people, forget that you're never siloed in one area. If you're passionate about something and your career starts to take you in a different direction, I think you can always find a way to make something work or to find a different area that you're passionate about. If you make smart decisions and you set measurable goals that you can actually accomplish, you can do those types of things, and there are people that are great examples of that all the time. And so I think that there's another good example for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always thought that law was the specialization, right? And then it kind of like when you practice law, that's the specialized thing because I always heard it was such a high paying job. It was always so hard to get into law school, all those various things. But it sounds like law is the general overview, and then whatever your undergrad is or whatever you're interested in, that is your specialization. And getting that law degree is just how you apply your knowledge or interest in that specific sector.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
get the law degree and you learn literally everything,
Yeah.
and you're pretty much just learning how to analyze and solve problems. So law school is in part like a very practical experience, and at Penn State Dickinson Law, it's a lot more practical of an experience than at other law schools, I think, where you're required to be doing internships and externships as graduation requirements before you graduate. You have to have a minimum of 12 credits of what's called experiential learning at Penn State Dickinson Law to graduate. So 2 of those must be in semester internships. So during that time frame, you're actually out working at a law firm or at the DA's office, clerking for a judge, and sort of learning all of the different areas of the law that you're passionate about and that you could see yourself succeeding at. While in the classroom, you're literally just learning everything about the law, how to analyze problems, how to solve problems, and just that general knowledge that you gain helps you perfect your craft. And then eventually, as you go through that experience, and this is sort of how it happened for me, through the required internships, you learn what it is you think your specialization in the law should be or what your niche is. And the opportunities then kind of arise from there. So it really irons itself out if you're patient with it and you go through the process with an open mind. And so that's what I did. I tried all kinds of different stuff in law school, and that's how I ended up carving, myself into where I wanted to go.
Yeah. So what made you want to do intellectual property though? What part of that realm interested you?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting about my specific career field is that in the law, intellectual property, while it is a specialization, it's also, in a sense, also very broad. So there are essentially 2 areas of intellectual property. There's patent work, which is even more specialized, and you have to have a STEM undergraduate degree to even qualify to do that work. So that's a whole other set of intellectual property issues. And patents are, of course, people's inventions and how you
Mm-hmm.
protect them, and how people create them and maneuver them around competitors. So that's a whole other area that's even further specialized within intellectual property. And then there's a second half of intellectual property, which is the practice that I'm in, that's focused on trademarks, branding, advertising, and commercial contracts. And so that area of intellectual property can become very broad because, in a sense, you're a brand attorney and you're giving people advice on trademarks. And so that's a transactional end of it. We do a lot of commercial contracts, and so we negotiate and draft contracts on behalf of businesses, and so that's a huge part of the practice. So then, in another sense, you're basically a general business lawyer at that point when you're doing people's commercial contracts. And then further, though, on top of that, there's intellectual property litigation. So people have trademark litigation come up every day of the week where either somebody is accusing them of using their trademark or vice versa, or you want to protect your trademark or your branding from becoming diluted. And then you hire a trademark attorney, someone like myself or our intellectual property group at McNeese, to advise you on how you can protect and strategize and maintain the strength of your brand long term. And so you do that through IP litigation, and strategies that businesses employ with the USPTO, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So yeah, so I originally chose IP because I thought, and specifically this half of IP, that intellectual property trademarks, because it's in a sense general business with a specialty, and I thought maybe I'd be interested in doing litigation as well. And so this is a practice area that you really get sort of the intersection of both. You do
Yeah.
the general business work, but you also can be involved in litigation and making arguments on behalf of your clients, your business and corporate clients, in front of the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board and the USPTO. So that's sort of how that ironed out for me. And so far, it's been going great. It's just a heck of a learning experience. It's a whole new learning curve then once you get out of law school and you start doing these things in practice. And it's another thing you just have to keep chipping away at and building upon with an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
makes sense that you're in something like that requires you to both be good at the paperwork with clients and then also litigation, because you've always been such a well-rounded individual when it came to anything that I
Well,
was
I
ever a part
appreciate
of.
that.
Yeah, dude. Like, it makes sense that you would be good. I can already picture it. I can picture you sitting down, analyzing stuff, being good, writing notes down, and then also talking to the client, building a personal relationship, and then defending the client very well in front of a judge.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate that. Yeah, so
yeah, dude.
yeah, those are some of the things that you can do as an intellectual property attorney. And um, you know, and the other aspect of this too is like we do some entertainment stuff. We do copyright, so we've represented a ton of different clients in different areas that are related to that. I've currently been working on and trying to um, build a practice area around is name, image, and likeness. And so that's a specialty within intellectual property because you're helping somebody brand and create a business around their name, around their image, around their likeness. And so that's somebody's personal intellectual property that you're going to help them monetize and build a business entity around and build a brand that's protectable, that somebody can make a lot of money off of. So the NIL work that has sort of spun off in the last year and a half to 2 years since the NCAA has announced the the policy allowing for student athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, or NIL. That has sort of ironed out another specialty inside of intellectual property or inside of general business that is really interesting to see as an attorney, and particularly for me, who's a football guy who's
Yeah.
now practicing law and in the intellectual property specialty. So like this is sort of exactly what I do now for a living. And you can do that in helping student athletes and like, particularly for me, like football players, which I think is really cool. And so that's something that I look forward to continuing to learn about as the law evolves, because it's so wide open right now. It's just there's really no regulations or laws in place around it. It's kind of just the wild, wild west. And so wherever those opportunities where things are so new that it leaves open a vast road of opportunities ahead if you get in at the right time and you just start chipping away and learning these things from the start, which is now where we're at. And so and every other intellectual property or business attorney is in the same boat with the NIL field. So it's like you're learning these issues and helping people achieve goals that college athletes have never been able to achieve before. But that's a really awesome piece of it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really important to get a jump on things when they first start, like the NIL deals. It's kind of like the .com boom when the internet
Yeah.
first started. People who started e-commerce, who started buying domains immediately, knowing that those things were going to be very valuable. It's very important to jump on those things when you can and as soon as possible. So I think it's a very smart and strategic move for you to be working in this field as it's developing. And one of my questions was going to be, are there any hurdles that you have to jump through at all when it comes to making these deals?
Yeah. So with NIL deals, yeah, there are a lot right now, and we'll see what happens. But basically, the NCAA in 2021, excuse me, they put out this interim NIL policy and basically just said student athletes are allowed to make money off their name, image, and likeness. It didn't say much more than outside of
Yeah, didn't put a lot of thought into that one.
that. So that left colleges and universities and student athletes going like, okay, what does that mean? And so then over the last 2 years, you've seen the formation of things like NIL collectives who pool money and sponsors and resources for universities and for uh, specific sports programs at universities, and those are all run separately and outside of the university. So you have all of that going on, and there's just a lot of, and then in general, then there's also I think we're up to 33 state laws on NIL. So depending on where you're at in the country, there's a different piece of state legislation that lays out the law of the land as to what you can and cannot do as a student athlete from an NIL perspective. So then on top of that, there's university policies that you have to comply with and conference level policies that you have to comply with. So there's a lot going on all at once, and that has left colleges and student athletes even more confused about how do you navigate all of these different regulations that are saying different things and sort of pointing in different directions. And so that, as a lawyer, has been probably the biggest challenge in me learning that area of the law, because not a lot of people know what's going on with any of these things.
Yeah.
Not even, I don't think, the legislators that are drafting the laws or the NCAA that's coming out with a policy. And it's evolving before our eyes. Like you can see where things are going. So now the next debate is because there's so much going on across the states and with the NCAA policy, there's a lot of discussion and debate going on in the U.S. Congress as to if there's a need and when there's a need for federal legislation to sort of have a universal law and regulation over the NIL field that will apply to all 50 states. So it looks like that's where it's headed. But there's been bills that have been voted on that don't get through, and there's two, I think, being debated right now. And so it's being able to learn and understand those things on the fly, because these student athletes want to do business and they want to make the most of the opportunities that they have in the short amount of time that they have. Like, you have 4 years to do this, and you may or may not go pro, and it's such a small percentage of people that get to go on and do that. So NIL deals are still going on amidst all of this debate and all these different challenges that the universities, the NCAA, and the student athletes have faced in even putting together deals that comply with the policies and the state level laws. So I think that's been a really big challenge, just sort of understanding where everything is going. And so that's still ironing out. It's kind of a gray area right now, but you just kind of have to roll with it. And I think learning to operate and be successful in the gray is, where opportunities will arise. So that's, how you become, I think, successful if you're comfortable working through those things as they're still gray. When it becomes more clear, then you'll know exactly what it is you need to do.
Yeah. So do you think, because I know at a certain level, right, the federal government, if they come out with an NIL policy or legislation, that the states can still have more stringent rules, stricter than what the federal allows. But do you think with all the confusion at the university level, the state level, the conference level, that everyone would just adopt what the federal government would say? I mean, is that something that in your experience has been a well-known thing to happen with legislation? Or, just give some insight on that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Actually, it's really insightful. It is possible that states could pass more stringent requirements, and the federal government would be a baseline for that. And I think whenever the federal government passes legislation, state legislatures around the country come up with what their opinion is of that. And so I think that that's definitely a possibility as to where that could go. And then the NCAA will adopt their policy as necessary on the fly. And it is possible. Yeah. I think that it's one of those things that you just have to see how it plays out. But states don't always like being told what they have to do. So,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting and also, you never know. Too, whenever something goes to Washington, you just have no idea what's going to happen with it. So we're sort of watching and analyzing that one closely to see where it ends up going and what mess is going to be created from it.
Yeah, man. I mean, and when it all sorts out, or even before it sorts out, is there any specific plans that you have to stay within, within the state or within a certain conference, just to kind of ease your policies, I guess you could say, like to ease you don't have to know a bunch of different state, like the differences and things like that. Is
Yeah.
there any specific goal that you have?
Yeah. I think that having a universal federal policy, a federal law, over NIL will definitely help shape the guardrails as to where NIL is headed in the future. And so I think that will help definitely provide some guidance on that. And I think that the number one focus of myself. And I was just talking about this the other day, and with an administrator at a university, and the discussion was like, where like what has been the most rewarding thing about your job, and I share this. I think that the best thing to come out of NIL is the ability to help somebody change their lives. And
Yeah.
so I'm not necessarily at this point in time focused on when and where, where it's going to go, or, a focus on a particular state or, a particular university. I think my point of view on it is I really want to see these student athletes, change their lives for the better. And I think that's the main motivation. I think that should be, and that's not always the case for a lot of people that are trying to get into NIL. That's where my perspective is coming from with that, because these student athletes have an opportunity that they've never had before, and people coming from varying backgrounds from all over the country, and you have 4 years to build a platform and to build a business entity and a brand around yourself that can legitimately, if you're motivated enough as an entrepreneur and as a student athlete, you can create a life-changing business for yourself in college, and with the connections that you're going to make as a student athlete at some of these major universities. So um, that's the main focus for me. I think the motivation there is trying to help people create a life-changing opportunity and helping people get there. So that's a very impactful and rewarding aspect of where this could go in the future for me, where I hope it goes. Just from a standpoint of like I want to leave an impact on somebody's life, and to be able to help them change the direction of their life. So
Yeah.
it's not always about the opportunities or what money can be made from it. For me, that's almost like it's subsidiary to what the actual goal is, and that's helping somebody. And that's not
Yeah.
always the case in everything you do. Like, you can negotiate like business contracts, commercial contracts, and you're helping companies build brands. And that's very important work because it has to be done. That's how people transact business and how they grow their companies and their brands. And so that's not to take away from anything, about that part of my job, but this part of the job can potentially be very, very impactful for somebody that comes from nothing and builds a brand and a platform around themselves, and how you can help that person transform their lives and their families' lives for the better. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I really look forward to seeing, and how impactful that could be.
That's a very mature mindset, and I really like that you take that approach to it, because while you did say like making those business contracts, that's important because those businesses, you protect their assets, their intellectual property, things like that. But to your point, what you said is that what is now becoming with NIL deals is that you can change someone's life, and you can
Right.
be a part of those life-changing moments, and kind of even be like a coach for them on how to market themselves and how to brand themselves. Even though, you're a
Exactly.
practicing attorney,
A
you
mentor.
can also, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean, a lot of these student athletes too, they come from such, varying backgrounds. Some people don't have access to resources or to mentors, and so to just like help a student athlete, and mentor them through what is a super complex process, and to just sort of be a guidepost for them to bounce ideas off of, or to just talk to about life or things that they're confused about, helping them navigate being a student athlete, being an athlete and a student, and then an entrepreneur on top of it, and help alleviate some of the stress that a lot of these people are facing as young student athletes. And so I think, and that's something that I can very much relate to as someone who was not only a football player, but a 4-year starter in a college football program, who finished his undergrad in 3 years and then went to law school on top of all of that. So while I wasn't making any money off of any of that, I was learning priorities and navigating stressful situations and strategizing all of that, and how you create, how you're a creature of your work ethic and what you set your mind towards doing. And so being able to then share that perspective with student athletes has been really rewarding too, because that perspective, really does, come off and to another person, you can truly achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve as a student, as an athlete, and as an entrepreneur, if you set together like calculable, measurable goals, and you chip away at it with discipline and with persistence over time, each and every day, you can achieve it. It's just a matter of how hard you want to work for it and how much does it mean to you. You can definitely get there. So that's the perspective that I bring, and everything else aside, if you get to share that, anytime I get to share that perspective with somebody is, I think, a win. And if it impacts one person, then then that's a really rewarding thing that not a lot of people get the opportunity to do. So I've always been one that wants to continue to grow and build my own career and build myself, and then also share those experiences with others and send it down the line so that they too can achieve whatever their goals are, in life, on the football field, off the football field. So that's been, I think that's the most inspiring thing for me right now. And that's why I do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense that your word is build, because that's what you're doing. You build yourself up. You build a great education for yourself, a lot of experiences, and you're also in the business of building other people up. You're in the business of building up those college kids, those college football players specifically, and building a platform,
Yeah, I
building
appreciate that.
generational
Yeah.
wealth, all that. So it's very fitting that your word is build. And is that why you picked it? Because that's what you do? Or is there, why'd you pick build for your
Yeah,
word?
no, that is why I picked it.
Yeah.
I'm always working towards something, and sometimes you don't even always know exactly how it's going to shape up in the end. Just like when you start a project, you may not know what the picture is going to look like at the end. Or you're building a building, you have an idea of what you want it to look like, and then things change as you're building and as you're creating it. Um, so, but that ultimately you're taking the steps necessary to build the end result that is going to be a net positive for you. And so I'm always looking, at what I'm trying to build next, and what what my definition of success is, and how that changes, and how that's different between different people. So my perspective of success is, not necessarily monetarily, or how big your house is, or what car you drive. I think that success is finding happiness in what you do, and how much of an impact you can have on other people and other generations. And so if I'm able to build that in my career, then I'll consider that a big success because you've impacted the lives of other people and you've helped them build and find their own definition of success. And so that's, that's the mindset that I approach almost anything with. And things are not always easy. And they, almost every step of my journey to get to where I have gone, something has not gone the way I wanted it to, or the way it was supposed to, because things aren't perfect. And this goes back to something that I was talking about earlier. Things are not black and white. You have to be able to operate in the gray. And that's how, if you're comfortable being uncomfortable and trusting and believing in yourself and what you're building towards, you can achieve an infinite amount of success if you're consistent and persistent to that core principle. So that's my perspective on these things. So I'm always looking to build upon things, and when things don't go my way, I don't necessarily consider it a step down. I consider it another step ahead, because I just learned something. And you continue to learn and build upon your previous successes and failures until you reach that end goal. And so I think that also another thing that's like so inspiring about that is, I think that the sky is really the limit, because I'm just going to keep building what I think I'm building right now, and trusting and believing in myself and in that direction. And there isn't necessarily, I don't know what the end picture is, because the way I see it is that it's open ended. But I know that the steps and the direction that I'm taking is going to lead to helping others and to helping them build their own success. And that can go on, for a long period of time. And so you just keep trusting and believing in that and in yourself. And that's how you find your definition of success.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective. I love that, especially your perspective on failure and failure actually being a step up, because like you said, all you did was learn. It's actually a step in an upward direction. Some people go, "Oh no, like failure, like you just have to try again." Like, no, you're actually progressing. That's what's actually happening.
Right.
Because if you don't take those steps, you're not on that path. And say you procrastinate and you don't take that step and fail at this step, you're still down here. That failure still may happen. So
If
when
you
you
learn from it.
fail,
Yep.
yeah. So when you fail, you're actually progressing yourself forward. So I really appreciate that mindset, and I like that mindset. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always something to learn from failure. And I have failed many times along the way, and in not reaching the goals that I needed to hit, um, along the step of my journey to finish the 3 and 3 and to go to law school. And no part of that process was ever easy. And that's not to say that I didn't mess things up or fail along the way, or think that I wasn't going to be able to achieve something. But navigating around those issues and learning something from it will either propel you forward, or it'll propel you in a different direction that you originally thought. But there's always a plan and a way ahead if you approach failure in that way.
Yeah.
You can take steps back if you're not learning from it, or if you take the victim's mentality. There is always that option, and I choose to try to avoid that one as much as I can.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's definitely a good way to look at it. I know for a while I was a big victim mentality guy. I was blame everyone else for the reason that I was heavy. Blame everyone else for the reason I wasn't being successful. I would blame my teachers for the reason my grades weren't where they should have
Right.
been. All that stuff. So what was, like, you personally, like, what was like the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome in life or in law school, however specific you want to be?
Oh man, So there's been a lot. I mean, there's been a lot. So it's sports injuries, and overcoming that, and overcoming, like competitions for starting jobs, in football programs, and the challenges that presents is certainly, at the top of the list. And overcoming those adversities has been a big part of shaping my character today. So I think that would definitely be one. But I think the one that really comes to mind is I was working towards this 3-3, and I needed to finish my undergrad a year early. And I'm doing all the right things. I have a 3.93 GPA. I'm doing everything necessary to do this thing in 3 years and to get into law school. And I took the LSAT the first time, and I didn't score high enough to get into Penn State Dickinson Law. And I'm doing all these things on top of being a student athlete, and I'm trying to get a 4.0. And so I graduated with 3.9. I only had one semester that I didn't have a 4.0, and it was my first semester of college as a freshman. I think I had a 3.7 or something like that. I had 4.0s then the rest of the time, nearly the rest of the time. I think there may have been another semester I had 3.9, but the goal was a 4.0 for me every single semester. And so I would work my tail off to do that. I would work my tail off in the weight room, in the off-season training program, on the football field, to become a starter, to maintain my spot, to be the best player that I could be. And so I'm doing all of those things on top of the pressure of studying for the LSAT and trying to get into law school. And I shot for it, and I didn't score high enough the first time. And so I had a conversation then with the law school afterwards, and it's a difference of like a couple points. And so how these standardized tests are. But they told me that I needed to go back and do it again. And I was pissed. I was really pissed. Because of how, and I was coming from Dickinson College. They know my whole story and everything. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? That they're going to make me go do this again? That they couldn't just let me into the school. But I think it's another good example that nothing is ever going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Nothing has ever been handed to me. I can tell you that. And you have to handle those failures in the right way. And so I had to take the LSAT again amidst spring ball and spring training and morning workouts and lifts and everything. So I had to take it again, and I had to approach it with a different attitude. And I had to commit basically to an extra class, which was me studying for the LSAT every single night for an entire semester. That winter break, I came home, and I usually would work in the winter breaks to try to make some money while I was at home.
Yeah.
I didn't work. I didn't work at all. I forfeited the job so that I could sit at home and study from 8 to 5 for the LSAT, so that I could get the score up high enough to where it needed to go so that I could get into law school. And that's what I did. And then I went back after that winter break, and I continued that routine on top of my class schedule, on top of winter workouts and spring ball, and on top of getting a 4.0 in my economics undergrad, because I needed to keep my GPA where it was so that I could really get in. If that slips, I'm really not getting in. So, and I had just committed myself to 3 years of doing this, of course, and I'm nearing the end. And so that's what I had to do. But I would, I saw the goal, and I knew what I had to do to achieve it. And I set those study goals and would regiment my day out around my football and class schedule so that I could study for the LSAT full time, to get into the law school. And I that motivated me to get it done. And sure enough, then I knocked that down. And if I would have given up, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair here talking to you. It would have been easy to be like, I have a 3.9 GPA. Like, I don't need to do this. I can go do something else. I could go be a business person. But instead I chose to learn from that experience. I buckled down and did what I needed to do. And, from that experience, I ended up going from not getting in to taking it again, getting in, and then becoming the Student Bar Association president of the school in my third year, and finishing towards the top end of my class. So that was a real learning experience for me at a young age. I think I was 20 years old, and I went to law school. I was the youngest person there. I was 21. I was barely old enough to have a beer, but I was there and I worked my tail off, and I continued to do that through law school. And so if I would have given up then, who knows what I'd be doing right now. But I didn't, and so here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to have a fantastic support system in order to be able to achieve what you achieved.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. So not everybody has that either. So yeah, no, my parents, my grandparents, they would never let me sell myself short.
No.
I come from a very loving family, and they support me in everything that I do. But you know what? They would have been okay if I would have just said, I'm not doing the LSAT again. I'm done with this. Because they'll support me in doing whatever it is that I want to do. And they, my parents would never let me sell myself short. But when I said that I wanted to continue on with this, then, they encouraged and stood behind me in doing that. And so that's a large part of the reason why I was able to cross the finish line, because of that support system that I have. And having that is huge, because like I said, they'd have supported me, man, like if I would have quit. And they don't care. I've always been a very self-driven, motivated person. Like, I think they would have been fine with whatever career field I would have chosen, and supported and been behind me in that. But having that behind you helps you achieve that success.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
that's
they were
yep.
yeah, they could do that because of how self-driven you were. Because if you weren't self-driven, they would have had to have been like you need to do this, you need to take the LSATs, but like they knew in their head and their heart, based on who you are and what you've exhibited throughout your life, that you are a person that doesn't give up. So they knew even if you changed direction or propelled yourself in a different way and didn't take the LSATs, that whatever you chose, you were going to succeed at. So because even though you say you're self-driven because of them, they can be how they are because you're self-driven. So it's a two-way street. And that's where you also have to give yourself credit. I know, like, not making excuses is very important, but when you do achieve those things, giving yourself credit is very important.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And the other thing too, that I think that this has been kind of cool too about the NIL process, and getting to meet some people. And if I can ever serve as like a mentor to somebody and sharing my perspective, that might not have that mentor in their life, that like is one of the most rewarding things that I can do in giving back. And so I also understand and appreciate the opportunity to share that with others too. And as I've learned and grown, and have to continue to do so. So there's like a whole new set of challenges for me to overcome, and I don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to end up, but you keep chipping away at it. You keep building towards what to be a positive direction, and in your hard work and in your ethic, and know that you're going to take yourself and others to a level of success.
Absolutely, Phil. And Phil, you have a quote for us to share as well. So if you want to
Yeah.
share that quote now.
Yeah, so this one is this is one that I choose to live my life by, and I remind myself of it all the time. I actually I have a wallet that has it engraved in there, this quote. And so I look at it when I'm, feeling like lost, or, feel like I need to refocus my efforts on what my direction is. And the quote is by a renowned author, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And so, that kind of goes back to the whole theme of this podcast, in that if you're trying to build something, you have to have the patience, persistence, and perseverance to build it. And it's not always going to be what your friends, your neighbors, other people in your life think that it's going to be, what that path is for them or what it was for them. It might be an entirely different path that you can't be afraid to take. So take the path less traveled and leave a trail for others then to follow that same mold and that same mentality as you build what you're trying to build. And
Yeah.
that's one that I try to remind myself of on a daily basis. Just keep taking the path less traveled, keep trusting yourself, keep working hard, and approaching things with a positive attitude, and positive things and success will follow, and you'll be able to share that success and positivity with those that are coming behind you.
Absolutely. You got to build your own path, Phil.
Yep, that's
And
right.
you certainly did that with being one of the first, or in a while being one of the people to do the 3-and-3, and especially playing football. It was kind of destined from before you even started going into law school that you were going to be someone that built their own path. So
I
that-
appreciate you, man. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So we'll
absolutely,
just keep
man.
building it, man. You just have to keep on climbing.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on the podcast too, man. Your insights have been invaluable.
I appreciate you having me and having the opportunity to share my perspective with your viewers, and my story and my journey. And so if I, any opportunity I have, and like I said earlier, if you share your story and it impacts one person, that's a win. That's a net gain. And
Absolutely.
so if, hearing my story inspires any of your viewers, that's a really impactful net positive for me. And so I'm happy to do it. And I'm honored to be a guest on your show, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Thank you. And thanks for everyone. If you made it this far and you're still listening, follow us on Instagram at excelcast_, and then subscribe to us on YouTube at excelcast. Follow us on Spotify at excelcast, and we're also on TikTok at excelcast. Be sure to, like, comment, subscribe, do the Q&A poll, whatever the various platform offers. And as always, stay blessed and excel.